Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. So, on the agenda tonight, we're going to be taking a look at Barbra Streisand and Barbra Streisand. One of the performances is going to be a recent release of something that happened in 1962, and in the video they just show you a collection of still images because it's the audio from a performance in a suburban club, something like that. So we're going to compare that with a vocal from a TV performance that happened about 6 months later. So it's all happening in and around the same time. So the reason that I'm doing this is because somebody has sent me a link to this newer release asking me whether anything's been done to it. So as always, the links to these videos are in the description below in case you want to watch them the whole way through with the instrumentation and just enjoy the performances, because we are going to be listening to the isolated vocals here. And what I've done is I've panned the 1962 performance in the left channel, and that's the recent release, and the 1963 vocal in the right channel. And I'm going to let them play back at the same time. Because they're different tempos, it actually works out quite well, because you get to hear one phrase from 1962 and then the 1963 phrase just after. So it will go a little bit more out of time as we progress, but we can have a look at the vocal lines and the pitch lines on screen and see what's going on. Let's have a listen.
Now you say you're lonely.
And this is the great thing, even though we've started synchronized, the great thing about truly live performances is that they will never sound exactly the same. One night to the next, there'll always be changes with timing, especially with the vocal here, but timing with the band and the feel of the particular night. And here, you'll also be able to appreciate how Barbra changes her phrasing with so many of the lines of these two performances. But anyway, getting back to this point of listening to the recent release to try and hear if anything's been done to it, we know that on the right hand side it's unedited. So on the left hand side,
Now you say you're...
it's a good sign so far, because here we can see that Barbra was actually slightly sharp of the F4, and over here she was a little bit flat and then had her vibrato and had this little flow to it. But I would say that if this was edited, generally that the first notes of any performance, live or otherwise, are going to be the most edited because it's the first thing the audience hears. So you can bed in that pitch, and then a little bit later on things will be maybe less edited and sound a little bit more natural. If somebody comes in straight away off key and out of pitch, then it's very hard to recover from that. You need to have that good first impression. So the first impression we get here is great because it's Barbra Streisand's voice, but it's great as well because I think this would have been edited. It would have been moved if they were applying pitch correction, because we're between notes here and we're sharp here. So let's listen on.
You're lonely. You cry the long night through.
And when I say about the variations that we get in the delivery, have a look here. We held this note, again, slightly sharp, but here Barbra added vibrato to it. So we get totally unique versions of this vocal. Look at the way you hear that, again, a little bit sharp, absolutely bang on here. But you'll see as we work through this, I mean, Barbra's voice is immune to pitch correction. It doesn't need it because she's exactly where she needs to be all the time. And you'll probably notice this as we go through.
Well, you can cry.
Listen to the disparity in pitch between those two notes. Have a listen again. Clearly flat and clearly sharp. When I say clearly, when you have them playing back at the same time. This is the kind of thing that if I just give you this in isolation.
Well, you can cry me a river.
Sounds absolutely fine by itself.
Cry me a river.
Sounds fine as well. I'll take that a little bit further back.
You can cry me a river.
So here we are, significantly sharp, as in the other performance we were significantly flat. But when you play them by themselves, they sound absolutely fine. Now, why is that? It's because of intervals, and I'm always talking about intervals. So here, when Barbra is sharp, she hits the note sharp, vibrato sharp, then comes up sharp, as you can see, of the B4, and comes down and stays sharp. So she's now in between notes. So all of this is relevant. So when you're listening to her pitch, because it's all in the same place, that it sounds relevant to itself. It's very high for me, of course. But over here, have a look how we're slightly flat here. We come up, bang on, we come down, and then we're a little bit flat, and then here we start flat, and then we get into this wider vibrato. Now, if she had started flat and then had gone sharp and then come down a bit sharp, that's where the ear then says, oh, hang on, there's no common ground here. The intervals are out, and everyone can tell that. So when we listen to these together, the reason you can hear that they're different is because the intervals between these two separate voices are out with each other, but when you listen to them in isolation, they are relevant to themselves. So, listen again.
And cry me a river.
And it's so clear when you hear them together, but it's great because it really does show how pitch actually isn't that important. You've got to be in and around the right area. We are closer to the note that Barbra is hitting than, a semitone higher or a semitone lower. So pitch is important, but it's not the be all and end all. You can be sharp and you can be flat, but if your intervals are accurate, then you are still going to sound accurate. Even if technically when you're looking at it, you can say that, yeah, it's significantly sharp or significantly flat.
Cry me a river. Cry me a river. I cried a river over you.
And see how now we've almost got a perfect replication. It's never going to be a perfect replication, but I'm talking about just using your ears as a human. You can't hear it in this kind of detail. Obviously, when we look at it, these lines will never go over the top of each other because they're two separate performances. But the way that her pitch accuracy is so solid from left to right. And I'll just take that back again. I don't want this video to go on for years because we could just be listening to each phrase and comparing it with itself from 1962 to 1963.
I cried a river over you.
I mean, you could say, here, this vibrato in 1963, she really gets wide with it. It's going up and down. Look, I'm just thinking whether this is the widest vibrato maybe that we've ever seen. It might not be because we haven't looked at classical singers in the past who do have a lot wider vibrato. But having a look at this, if we're taking this particular section, we're kind of between notes here. So if we take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 semitones, that is dramatic. And you can hear how she kind of relaxes into it. Starts off with her more traditional vibrato, still wider in 1963 than 1962.
Now you say.
Great example there. Different phrasing, but just listen to the pitch accuracy because it is so similar.
You're sorry.
And the attitude in the right hand side that we didn't get in the left.
You're sorry.
It's great. It shows you what a live performance is all about. So in 1963, she was a little bit more annoyed than she was in 1962.
For being
So untrue. And you're still getting a bit more attitude.
you can cry me a
Well, you
river.
can cry me a river.
Cry me a river.
Cry me a river.
I cried a river over you.
I cried a river.
Aha! Have a listen to this. We've actually got a different melody here that she's singing in 1963. Let's have a listen again.
Cried a river.
I cried a river. So, comparing that with now 1963.
Over you.
I cried a river.
I cried a river. She actually went up to the F4 in 1963 rather than staying at the E4, which she did in 1962. And there's so much difference between going, I cried a river and I cried a river. That's going from minor na to major na. So you get a happier sound in 1963. And again, these are the tiny details of live performances with a great singer, where she sounded like she's got a bit more attitude in 1963, but then she contradicts that by going, I cried a river over you, and it's all quite major there.
You drove me.
Nearly drove me out of my head.
Nearly drove me out of my head.
While you never.
Listen to, again, that phrasing, the cadence of the delivery in 1963, totally different. But again, when we're looking at pitch accuracy here, you know, G4, pretty much bang on. And when we're looking over here, we've got the G4, again, you know, pretty much bang on. And the great thing is that because of what I do with Authentic Vocal, looking at pitch lines, comparing performances, and effectively verifying live performances, and that the vocals are authentic and they haven't been dramatically edited, you know, with regards to pitch. In this particular case, because we're talking about just a fantastic singer and a really accurate singer anyway, it doesn't need pitch correction, but we've seen that in the past with great singers that it still has been applied. Effectively, what's happening is we're comparing a vocal from 1962 to 1963, and what I'm doing when I'm analysing the voice is building up the personality of the singer and the unique vocal traits that that singer has, and comparing them with another performance that we know is live, and looking at those two together to think, are these things being replicated in these two separate performances? And here they absolutely are. And not only listening to it, but these things are being replicated on screen in, you know, almost infinite detail of pitch. Let's listen on to this.
Never shed a tear.
While you never shed a tear.
Remember.
Tiny little change there, just going up a semitone at the end of that vocal line.
I remember all that you said.
I remember all
Told me love was too
that you said.
Yeah, again, listen to the difference that we've got here. I mean, it's great. Totally different versions. Even though, yeah, it's the same song, the same singer, but it shows you what a great singer does and what an artist does. They just change as to how they're feeling on the night. I might get rid of the left-hand side so that we can just appreciate this attitude going on in the right channel.
Remember all that you said.
That you said! You know, there's... And this is it. When I said about pitch not really being that important, it's all about the expression and the storytelling that great singers put into their performances, and Barbara's definitely doing here, more so on the right-hand side.
Well, just
Well,
to
just to prove.
Still more attitude in that right channel.
Prove you do.
Again, listen to that disparity in pitch, but yeah, over here on the left-hand side. Again, people that might not have been looking at, you know, pitch lines for years might look at that and think, oh no, it's been pitch corrected and this, you know, recent release has gone, you know, under the same treatment as a lot of other stuff that's getting released now. But this is just a great voice, and Barbara just happens to be very close. I say very close to the line because when we do zoom in, you can see that we're not actually calibrated here. The calibration to A440 standard pitch equal temperament, when it is done so strictly as it is done nowadays, you don't get this. It's actually directly over that line, which I know is stupid and just shows up so clearly. But somebody might think, oh no, it's been pitch corrected. But I think the most important thing to do always is to listen to it. And if you can't hear A440 standard pitch equal temperament, then it is going to be difficult to spot, but you might be able to hear the processed sound of the, processing actually happening, the computer holding it to that white line of A440. But let's listen on.
Cry me a river.
Cry me a river.
I cried a river.
I cried.
You
Again, held note, attitude.
drove me, nearly drove me out of my head.
You drove me.
And now she's getting a bit more annoyed in the left channel. And this is great because I know that normally we're analysing vocal technique, vibrato, slides, held notes, all this kind of stuff. But here, this is what happens when you roll all of that technique into expression. You get to hear anger or frustration, and you can start to hear it now coming out of the left channel. Listen to it.
drove me, nearly drove me out of my head.
You drove me.
I mean, it's great.
Nearly drove me out of my head.
Yeah, same kind of thing now. Our levels of annoyance are starting to balance out now between 1962 and 1963. I have just moved it slightly more in sync, which is difficult just because of the tempo being so different from one performance to the next, but let's listen on.
Ooh, you drove,
You drove me.
nearly drove me out of my head. While you never shed a tear.
I mean, there's such subtle differences here. The attitude's there, but just this slide that she has, you can see how she just delays that slide up, but here she goes straight up. And the great thing is, have a look at the pitch. How, when I said about that note that was held and ever so slightly sharp, but it looks like it's over the top of the line, the reason that we know that that's not pitch corrected is because, yeah, it isn't really heavily calibrated, but that this totally live performance, she is, pretty much over this line because she's just that good a singer.
I remember all that you said.
I remember all that
Told
you
me
said.
love was too
Told me love was
plebeian.
too.
Told me you were through with me.
Yeah, again, now she's actually got a little bit sarcastic, I'd say, in that right-hand side.
Love was too.
Told me you were through with me.
Told me you were through with me.
You say you love me.
And look at this. Again, really accurate here. Maybe drifting a tiny bit sharp. And here we had the held note, ascended, hit the pitch, and then just drifted a little bit flat. Back to the whole point of this analysis video, because somebody's asking, has this been edited? And this is one of the rare situations where we can say that actually this hasn't been corrected and it hasn't been moved all over the place. So, I mean, it's great that this hasn't been edited, and I don't know whether it's the case that people are starting to get a little bit more wary of overly editing, especially voices from 30, 40, 50 years ago, because people know those voices so well. So when they're then re-released and they might be either auto-tuned or pitch corrected, people think, well, what's going on with this? This isn't the voice of the person. And I know it's not the voice of the person because I've known this person's voice for 50 years. So I think this is good. It's rare, but it is good to be able to point out that this release has not been edited, and you can just go and enjoy it. And as is the case with these analysis videos, people request different videos, and I will look into whatever's going on or whatever's not going on, because sometimes, I know it's rare, but sometimes we will have this, where we can just enjoy the performance that's now been released And I mean, the audio quality from this 1962 performance is great. So check out that video in the description below, and you can listen to it and you can just appreciate Barbra's voice back then, and you can watch the other performance as well and just know that it's just a great vocal, a consistent vocal, and an authentic vocal. But anyway, thank you guys for requesting this particular analysis video for tonight. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below, and keep those suggestions and requests for future videos coming. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!